Welcome everybody to another episode of Nexperts. I have a special guest with me today, Johnknight1. He'll be going over Leoric, amongst other things for us today. But of course, we need to start things off with who is Johnknight1? Take it away, my friend.
Hello, I'm Johnknight1. Last year, I started out the first season in NGS in Div C West, back when it was the bottom div. I gradually grinded my way up to Div A on average shows, and then I was the captain of Get Stuffed in the Open Division and Heroic Div last year. And throughout all that, I've started as an offlaner, ironically, to join my first team in FML Esports in Div C West. And I just grinded. Basically one-tricked a bunch of heroes. I gradually worked my way through a bunch of heroes. And I wound up on this hero, actually, at some point, and I kind of just started winning with him a lot. And so I played him a ton since then. And right now I'm actually on a Div 1 Heroes Lounge team, Sanctified Livestock.
And how are you doing so far in that season?
Oof, hasn't started yet, but should be easy.
Sounds good. Nice to hear. Alrighty then. So offlane, which is something I've been wanting to get to, as it's an important role, more so than a lot of people would actually kind of anticipate. In fact, in a lot of teams, it seems to be a bit undervalued, wouldn't you say?
Oh, it is insanely undervalued. How much a good offlaner can provide. The utility of covering all the wave clear, getting map pressure, camp pressure, ganks. So there's so many ways that the offlane can impact the match. If a map is tied in the offlane, if the four mans are tied and the offlaner is winning the offlane duel, whether through soak or ganks or what have you, that can completely turn the map in the game on its head.
So Leoric is probably what I've heard referred to by specifically Ulysses quite recently as a very vanilla offlaner, as in he kind of encompasses the role almost in it of itself in his kit. And I wonder if you agree with that statement.
Kind of. He doesn't have hard CC, which is kind of a weakness of his. He doesn't have a stun or a silence necessarily, other than Entomb at 20. But he does have a slow. He has amazing wave clear. He has huge sustain. He just has a lot of ways that he can get out of any sort of gank or situation with ease in his Ghost Wraith ability.
So let's get down to it. What is it about Leoric that makes him such an effective offlane? Specifically, I know we just touched on it a little bit here, but what aspects of his character design allows him to do the role?
I would say just his overall ability to become a ghost. His E, Ghost Wraith, is just an insane ability. It allows you to do an unstoppable, so you can eat any CC while you're in Ghost form and just get out for free. It can give you if you're even on a rotation going for a gank with the other offlaner, and you just E, you can get a head start. It allows you to, be one place and go another in just an instant. And not only that, but if you're going the standard build, it allows you so much versatility and the damage reduction on the standard build, where you shut down all damage. It's so much help for teams having a Leo that's really good.
Now, what would you say tends to be his power spiking capability? We discussed this in all the previous videos that I've done up to this point. I asked the question, is it a hero that shows up late game? Is it a hero that has a lot of early power but falls off? Does he have kind of a steady curve? What would you kind of describe Leo's effectiveness throughout the game?
So a lot of that depends on the map. At level 4, Neil Peasants kind of allows him to double soak most 3-lane maps, and that can be a huge power spike because that can allow a 4-man to just focus down one lane or focus camps. But really the big power strike is when he gets Ominous Wraith at 13, which increases his Wraith Walk's duration, that's his E, doubles it And then it also, if you ghost through someone, as I like to call it, they do 50% less. That hero will do 50% less damage for 4 seconds, which is insane. And then it kind of goes from there with the 16 and 20 talents, where you can get the upgrade for that Royal Focus, where if you hit your Q on basically 2 heroes, you get a full reset of it, so you can have it up basically every 6 seconds. And then at level 20, obviously, it's the Silence and Tomb is huge, and that's just that wins games, like flat out. It's just a game winner.
So I guess in a way, he tends to have a weaker but not a weak start. It's kind of like you're a perpetual laner for the first 5 or 10 minutes of the game until you start getting into his level 13-16 power spike, where his team fight capability in fact starts to spike much higher, which that probably starts from the level 10 talent choice.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate, because Entomb allows you to just block someone off, whether offensively or defensively. Allows you to basically capture someone in a cage. And then March, on the other end, allows you to basically have sustain and do pretty nasty damage if you're going that build.
Alrighty, well, let's talk about the builds a little bit, and I think there's about 2 of approved builds that I would say exist in the current meta, kind of like Sylvanas, where we had the Dagger build that everybody kind of knows from Not Paradox's video, but then we had the Ryokai build, which I personally have experimented with a lot and is very, very strong. So let's hear your opinions on kind of what you should be taking as a Leo.
So I would say in about 95% of situations, you should go E-build, which is Ominous Wraith at 13 and Royal Focus at 16 with Entomb, with the Entomb and Entomb upgrade at 10 and 20. But there are situations, namely into like 3, if you're facing 3 beefy heroes, if you're facing like 2 beefy heroes and one's Rexar maybe, where you could go, instead of Entomb, you go March of the Black King, and then you go the 2 Drain talents at 13, 16, and the March upgrade at 20, which allows you to do percent damage and have a lot of sustain and kind of just melt frontliners. The only problem with that build is the mobility of the E build is insane, and the damage reduction is, it doesn't just help you, it helps your entire team, whereas W build's sort of selfish in a way. It's like it's just you walking down a lane usually. And so obviously like E build and coordinated play is obviously going to get way more value in almost every situation.
Now, at level 1, we have 3, I would say, situationally decent talents to take, although one of them, probably the situation is don't take it. But let's talk about that really quickly. We have Consume Vitality, which surprisingly tends to be one of the most picked talents on Leorix with the lowest win rate. We have Ashen Renewal, and we have Fealty unto Death. What do you think about those talents?
So Consume Vitality, the only way that gets value is with the Royal Focus, which again applies the Q resets for your E with E build. Now with that talent, the only reason you should take it is if you think like they're not going to burst you, which is like nearly 0% of games, or if you're straight up like think you're just better than a team, and that's kind of not a reliable situation. Generally, the 2 talents are Fealty and Ashen Renewal, and that's a really kind of hard juggle between the 2. Some people prefer one, some prefer the other. I prefer Ashen Renewal just because it provides an extra 20% heal over 5 seconds. So if you're in a fight, or 30%, excuse me. So if you're in a fight, you can pop it. You can pop it while you're ghosting, while you're standing still, while you're draining somebody. It just gives you extra sustain through burst. It gives you extra sustain through a long fight, especially if you're in a lane. But Fealty, on the other hand, gives you insane sustain if you're in a lane. If you're fighting basically every other wave with another offlaner, you will almost always be at full health. Unless you're hard stomping them, in which case you should basically be at full health. And if you're double soaking, it heals you insanely quickly. And if teams are constantly fighting over waves, that talent gets a lot of value. the way I usually look at fealty is on Tomb, for example, where you're always almost fighting on a lane. You can get some insane value if if your team's a win condition or prolonged team fights, rather than burst team fights.
Fealty unto death also is a simpler mechanic to kind of manage, especially if you are doing, as you kind of talked about, double soaking. Not something that I've mentioned a lot on this on Nexperts yet, because we've been mainly focusing on assassins, and a majority of assassins outside of very specific ones don't really have the ability to double soak. And Leoric is definitely one of those heroes that encompasses the double soak. Can you maybe go into a little detail on what double soaking is and what the advantages of doing such a thing actually is and what the conditions are?
So double soaking in this instance is an offlaner or a single hero. It's clearing 2 waves, basically before both waves die. Usually all or nearly all 7 or 8 minions in each wave. Leo, again, gets a huge power spike at level 4. Actually, this goes perfectly in the next talent, Kneel Peasants, which doubles his damage into mercenaries and minions. So if you... Paradox actually had a pretty good video on it, so if you Q basically the middle minion, and because he has a auto attack, he has a cleaving auto attack. So he has basically 3 auto... So he has a cleave, another cleave, and then he has a focused auto attack that does double damage on a single target. If you do the 2 cleaves and then you do his Q on the whole wave with Kneel Peasants, the wave basically dies. And that wave clear, that speed of that wave clear, allows you to clear the wave, quickly rotate, bot top, mid bot, insanely quick. And you can even ghost out of it and then instantly mount up and go even quicker if you're feeling a little risky.
And that actually comes into play a lot faster than some other of the double soaking heroes. I think the only one that can probably do it faster than him is Malthael with Pale Horse.
Zul can do it pretty good too, but that's more of an untraditional pick. Sonya at level 4 if she goes both W talents can do it, but that's pretty, and I guess Rexar too now. But I guess that's pretty much it. There's not too many super quick double soakers. But the difference between him and all those other offlaners that you just mentioned is that, again, his E ability. So if you get ganked, you can get out, avoid CC, and you're gone. Whereas, Sonya, she's still in there. Zul, he's still in there. Who's the other one I mentioned? Malthael's still in there. They're kind of, if they get, if someone's behind him, they're kind of boned. Whereas Leo, he doesn't have any, but he's just boned, so he gets out for free.
Yeah, and so it's a safer pick a lot of the time in the off lane, in the early game, especially if you are expecting any type of kills or ganks. So on the level 4 talent tier, you have talked about Kneel Peasants. Is there anything else worthwhile to take on that, or is that wave clear capability just too good of a tool to allow to not be taken on here?
No, all you need is the wave clear. The other 2 talents, Ghastly Reach, just extends your reach. You don't really need the extra reach, and then Paralyzing Rage just gives you a little bit more slow. That's not a big deal. Neither of those talents are going to impact a game in really any way. Even if Kneel Peasants didn't exist, those are bad talents.
Now talent tier number 7 actually has pretty good choice, because you can probably make arguments for pretty much any of those. What's your take on the level 7 talent tier?
This is kind of a not confusing, but detailed one. I usually go Hopelessness because the increased range is really good. It depends a lot into who you're playing into. So, for example, if you're facing Blaze, which is a matchup that Leo destroys in the 1v1, if he E's out on you, you still have your Drain Hope on him if you just walk towards him. Like, he can't get out, so you just chunk him harder. Whereas if you need the move speed, Drain Momentum, and they're not going to get out super free, Drain Momentum is really good. And it also gives you a 30% move speed if you keep it up for 4 seconds, which can give you insane added utility. And if you think you need more sustain in lane and you're constantly draining a target, then in team fights, Willing Vessel increases how much healing you receive from Drain Hope, especially if you cap it out and it lasts the full duration.
So I almost like that last one my personal feeling on it is when I'm going up against any target that has a high enough DPS output to get me down, but a low enough health bar that burst of damage might actually kill them. So I like to take that talent if I'm intending to bully any particular target out of a lane, especially ones with lower health bars than mine that do a higher percentage amount of damage.
Yeah, I used to always go willing vessel, but I just find the range of hopelessness is just personally like a huge deal because
It's oppressive.
especially since you can one of the secrets to Leo, sort of a secret, is you can W someone and then ghost, and while you're ghosting, it's still, you know, he is rather than your ghost. But then when you exit your ghost, you continue to drain exactly from where you spawn your new body.
Big brain plays right there, as you commonly like to say. I mean, that's a nice little detail about the usage of a talent that I don't think gets across. That the ghost hand does move with your body. So you don't have to always use your E at full extended range. You just need to use it enough to keep yourself within range, and then it just moves along with you. And, I don't know about you, but anytime I've leaned into Leoric, if I can ever dodge a W or get away from it once it lands, it gets kind of annoying in a lane because you know that you're almost never going to out-sustain him in that fight.
Yeah, and often the way you want to use W in fights is you want to QW. It just makes landing it easy. And as I always like to say, easy's good. Easy wins these games.
And Q is reset, actually. It actually lowers the cooldown anytime you hit a hero. So even when you're in lane, you often want to hit the other hero with Q while clearing the wave, because that actually makes it so that you can kind of do both things. You get the wave clear advantage and you're putting pressure on the enemy, especially since, like you said, if you're hitting them with a follow-up W after that, they kind of have to leave the lane or at least get out of range of you as soon as possible.
Yeah, if you're constantly hitting heroes with it, it refunds 50% of your mana and it lowers 50% of the cooldown. And that just can, like, for double soaking purposes especially, it can accelerate your wave clear. You're just like, if you're facing a offlaner that's only clearing one lane, and you're clearing two, you can just queue them. You're gonna have it quicker up, so you can go top, clear that lane, and then if you're say clearing mid top, then you can just clear that lane quicker. Then that allows you to rotate quicker. And also, if you're facing a double soaker and you're doing that, and if you're going faster than them, that accelerates how fast you're clearing, and it decelerates how fast they can clear. Especially if you're chunking them really hard. Like for example, I mentioned Blaze earlier. Blaze has a kit that's intrinsically weak to Leo, in that he's just a big body. He does decent damage, but not as much damage as Leo's W does to him.
Yeah.
And keeps him up. So you can just, walk up to him, hit him, clear the wave. He's got to either run or just take a crap ton of damage. And either way you win. It's a catch-22. As long as you're landing your skill shots.
Yeah, I remember at one point, and this is kind of referring to something we were talking about earlier, where people would argue that Blaze was good in the Leoric because you could use Bunker to get out of the last rites. And maybe when it was an instacast, that was probably an okay thing.
Last rites is a mouthfeel ability.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, not last... I meant to say Entomb. Yeah, not last rites. Jeez. Anyways, sorry. I got a little confused there. What I meant to say was they would use Bunker as a counter to Entomb. But the skill it takes and the team coordination it takes to actually use Bunker as a proper defense against Entomb is very unlikely in most situations, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would mostly agree with that, but also just like once you hit 13 with Leo, you just hard counter both of Blaze's ults. If he goes Combustion at 13, you're Ominous Wraith. If you're going E-build, again, the standard build, you just cut that damage in half. So it's like, okay, it does, like, it's kind of like, it goes from doing a significant amount of damage to it's kind of like getting pinched. It doesn't hurt that much. It's there and then it's gone. Whereas, like, if he goes Bunker, well, your E can outlast the Bunker, so you can damage reduce them in and out of the Bunker. And if your team kills the Bunker fast enough, you can entomb all the heroes that are in the Bunker relatively easily. And especially with the level 20 Bunker, or the level 20 Entomb upgrades for the Silence Entomb, you can instantly silence them, which again can straight win you a game.
Absolutely, I've seen the effect of that many times. Okay, so now we're at the level 10 talent tier where we're talking about Entomb and March of the Black King. Now, I think personally that Entomb is such an invaluable tool most of the time, though I will say it is something that needs to be used properly to get good effect. It still is such a powerful ability that going anything else seems kind of silly, as March of the Black King, yes, does do damage, yes, does self-sustain, but it has a very predictable path. So unless you can really lock heroes into a specific position, it becomes kind of hard to get a ton of value out. But it is part of the Drain Hope build, and I think up to this point, we do want to kind of talk about both variations, but really the level 1, 4, and 7 talents I don't think vary or change a whole lot. When you go the Drain Hope build, obviously you can confirm that, and of course give me your thoughts on the level 10 heroic choices for Leoric.
Yeah, so generally the level 1 to 7 talents are usually the same. It's pretty much the same I went over, except again at 7, Willing Vessel might actually be a little better for Drain Hope build, depending on, like, again, how much range you need. I'd lean more into that than I would if I was going the standard E build. The big difference between E and W build is, again, E build is about lowering the enemy team's damage and using your extra movement and your from your ghost form, and how much longer it's up in the damage reduction to impact team fights. Whereas Drain build is usually just about sucking the tank's health down to like 0 really quick via percent damage, which again both have their place, but generally E build is much better in coordinated environment.
And that is the point of this show for the most part, is to talk mostly about the coordinated situations on how you should be playing and drafting and seeing Leoric. As there's lots of, here or Storm League as we call it now, builds and guides out there. But this I want to get and make sure is a competitive perspective from people that are considered, in the upper echelons of that. So, anyways, continue, please.
Anyways, at level 10 is really where I think you should divert your path if you're going one or the other, because March goes really well with Drain build, and Entomb goes really well with E build. Because out of all that speed and utility, you can drop an Entomb and you can entrap an enemy team. You can catch an enemy hero out of position, and you can make an enemy hero that's technically considered in position way behind their team out of position. You can set up, long distance attacks or ultimates, such as, the classic is the meme beam, the what's it called? The Phoenix Planet Cracker.
Yeah.
You could do, that's a classic. You could do you can do like a hunt into an Entomb. You can do all kinds of things into an Entomb.
Can't you do a Diablo charge?
You can absolutely do a Diablo charge.
Yeah, so if you don't have any walls nearby, just say, "Hey Leoric, drop your freaking Entomb," and Diablo will just smash them right into the wall.
My favorite is just dropping an Entomb and then watching either my allies burst them with like a Greymane Cursed Bullet or something like that, or a Karazim 7-sided fist, or just watch them CC them, like an Uther Divine Storm combo, an ETC Power Slide into Mosh Pit, all kinds of, or Garrosh Taunt. Or even a Nubrek Q and E onto them. There's so much CC that's free off it. Another thing about it is you can use it to block terrain. So if an enemy's team is walking down a narrow hallway, you can just Entomb, bam, they can't go through that hallway.
It's a good way to disengage and save your team if they're too low, or it's a great way to initiate a fight if they think, hey, we can make this rotation here, and you're like, no, I predicted it. You're stuck now.
Actually, remember I always, for some reason, whenever I'm thinking Leo, I always think of this game where I was on Average Joe's and I just entombed the other team, or entombed the path from the other team to my team, so my team could get out. It was like a really weird looking entomb, but the other team couldn't get by it because it just had just enough space blocked on both sides of up or below it to where the other team couldn't walk past it. Another thing you can even do if you're really technical about the positioning is you can entomb them and get heroes stuck in between things. Actually, that's one of my favorites.
Yeah, pin them like against the wall outside their keep and they can't go anywhere because all there is an Entomb on one side and their own wall on the other.
One of my favorite Entombs I think I ever landed, I think was in an NGS match where I went past the keep wall and I entombed them and I got them stuck next to their well. I don't think I got the kill, but I got the style points, so
That's what's important. Anyways, as you can guys see, there's lots of uses, and in utility is one of those things that gets undervalued in a lot of like personal games or like Storm League, but is invaluable when it comes to competitive matches. The same thing, like when we talk about Void Prison from Zeratul or Sanctification from Tyrael, there's just so many situations that these things can be powerful when used properly. There's also some drawbacks to them sometimes where they can really screw your team up. So having good coordination with a lot of these ultimates can be very important. In fact, you control your team very hard with an Entomb if you really want to. But anyways, we'll briefly touch upon March of the Black King as, again, it doesn't have the same utility. When should you take it, and what's the proper way to use that ultimate?
So the situation I like to take it into is into like 3 frontliners usually. Like if they go like basically 2 bruisers and like a tank, or 2 tanks and a bruiser, something like that. I also do kind of like it into Rexar too if you can get near the Rexar. It provides you an unstoppable, which is kind of like his E, which is a huge resource. And the percent heals are huge, along with the 250 damage that it deals level 1. I think that's the baseline damage. But it does massive damage. Again, the thing is that you're just sitting there, you could get shot all day and you can't do anything about it. The best time to use it usually is when you're tying it together with some sort of CC, or if the enemy team's locked down in a position and they can't get out. The only problem is a lot of times when you're going to do it before level 20, you're just going to get bursted and die. But if you drain a target before you pop it, that helps with the sustain a lot too. So you should always look to drain a target before you pop it. You should kind of do the same thing with Entomb, but it depends really on your health situation. Sometimes with Entomb I like to hold my drains, whereas with March you almost have to always drain first. In my experience, in coordinated environment. In solo queue you can get away with a lot of dumb stuff. I'm sure as everybody knows.
Yeah, so I mean, if you've got, say, Void Prison into APOC, that's probably a perfect setup for something like March of the Black King, because it's just free hits, right?
Yeah. Although again, like, the Entomb does provide a little bit better utility in that, but if you're specifically trying to, say, burst a tank, like a Garrosh, that can be really hard to get onto as a Diablo that and a Leoric kind of combo. Even though Leo does well into him, Diablo doesn't. That can free him up a little bit more and also burst him. And again, it also builds to his level 20, where if the last swing of it, you apply a drain hope to every target you hit. And I specifically like that into Rexar because you can burn
him and Misha. Yeah,
you can burn him and Misha. It can get value into Vikings too, but you're not going to you can kill the Vikings, but I'm not sure if that'll provide much.
And they probably shouldn't be there.
They're generally going to E out of there unless they're not that good at Vikings, or they're CC'd out.
Exactly. So moving on to the 13, and this is where the builds start to actually approach, and kind of is the next big power spike for Leoric. It ramps up from level 1, in certain ways, and I'd say a lot of those talents on each of those tiers definitely have a massive impact on his impact in the game. The level 1s give him, his ability to trade and sustain. Level 4 gives him his ability to wave clear very effectively. Level 7 gives him options to be able to, use his W to more effect. 10, of course, opens up, begins the first spark of his talent kind of, ramp up, because then he, especially with Entomb, he gets that ability to hard CC multiple targets into bad positions and set up his team's team fights. 13 is where, though, I would say the true power spike actually lies, because it's the mechanic around his Wraith Walk that really makes Leoric a pain in the butt to deal with, especially if you're relying on a lot of high-powered burst. Because if he gets those Wraith Walks onto any of your big damage dealers like Jaina or Raynor or Gul'dan or any of these heroes, their effectiveness drops off by 50%. And they're still doing damage, yes, but a 50% drop-off in any big damage dealers is significant. It's a large amount of damage, and it almost makes any trade they have with the opposing DPS and even some tanks and healers that much worse. So let's talk about 13.
So 13, if we're going the standard build, Wraith is just, the damage reduction is insane. 100% less damage changes games. Like that's, or not 150%, just changes games. Like, if you're afraid if a Chromie times out your Jaina, for example, and you eat through her, well then her WQ combo is going to do half the damage. Your Jaina should generally be fine unless she's already significantly chunked out. If, Diablo lands like the APOC combo on your team and their team's bursting you, well, your team has a much better chance of surviving if you E through their entire team and they're not able to do the damage. One of my favorites is always KT Pyroblast. Is watching my team, like a teammate of mine, freak out because they're about to get Pyroblasted right as and I eat through their Kel'Thas, so it does half the damage. So it goes from like, oh, there goes all my health bar to, oh look, I lost only a quarter of my health bar at most. Any burst damage, any burst damage ult, any burst damage ability, it just cuts in half. There's so many heroes it basically neutralizes. It can really shut down Valeera, for example. It can affect Zeratil's Q combos and his sustain on level 20 specifically, I found. It can affect Thrall in how much damage he can burst to where he just kind of stays in too long. One of my favorites actually is Sonya in team fights. If she's Eing on your team to heal herself up, if you're ghosting through her, her heals are like cut in half, and that is huge. There's just so many that it's just like it's almost hard to comprehend how many like just heroes it shuts down or negatively affects. I just love doing that because you just like you feel. Normally when you're thinking of ways to impact the game, you're thinking, okay, I'm going to CC them or I'm going to blast a ton of damage. But what if you neutralize, or I'm going to heal my allies up? But what if you just neutralize their damage? It's like a cheat code almost with this hero when you're doing that. It feels so empowering and so oppressive. It's beautiful.
Oh yeah, I mean, I know that I refuse to pretty much play Leoric in any other way. Once you kind of master the use of Omni Wraith, it has a very significant impact in the game. It can't be understated. There is another talent on this tier, though, since the adjustments, I would say, to Leoric recently. So let's talk about that a little bit.
So the other talent is Unyielding Despair. That kind of goes, again, this is the W build, the Drain Hope build. Basically, every second his W's up, it reduces the cooldown by 1.5 seconds, and if you use the whole duration, then it goes down an additional 2 seconds. So basically you're going to have W up like all the time. Now the only problem with that is that's going to drain mana, but it's kind of the same thing with your E. But that can you can mill 1v1s like a Blaze and a Lane. You can go from winning it to just he can't step up. He can never step up. It can if you have a tank that's just like a Garrosh is just eating your team alive, it can just melt him to where he's got to play back. He can't just be like constantly walking up to your team and trying to Q or throw them or taunt them. It impacts a ton of beefy heroes. Another one is if you can get on, is it also helps into Rexstar sometimes, and that if you can melt Nisha faster, although that's kind of a very niche situation, whereas the other ones are pretty standard. Johanna's another one that's huge because she just kind of stands there and sucks everything up. But if you just get a Drain Hope on her, it's like she goes from unkillable to pretty killable. It's almost like you turn her into a bruiser.
Yeah, Leoric has been traditionally one of my I mean, I like to pair it on a team when I have Johanna just a lot of the time so that I don't have to deal with it on the other side. As you know, either one of those builds can be pretty effective into her. Now, I still think, her Unstoppable doesn't save her from an Entomb, but if you're popping your Entombs on just Johanna, that seems to be kind of a bad play.
Unless she's bursted down, or you're like really want to, or if another kind of way to use Entomb is you could Entomb her and then go after her team, or you could Entomb her and trap her team behind her. That's one of a play I made in a scrim once that was kind of. I thought I was being really dumb, but then I like watched back and I actually made like a really good play. I entombed a tank and I walked behind and I ghost wraithed behind the enemy team and I entrapped them and my team walked past the tank. I thought it was really stupid and I thought I was basically like inting when I did that, but my team wound up killing all their heroes. I thought it was like just a fluke.
Interesting kind of tactic, but it makes sense. You trap them so they can't really do anything to save. And then you use your E, as we talked about, the Wraith Omniwrath ability to just walk into the backline, shut down all their damage, and then just kill them all. Makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah.
Using that utility is insane. It's only as limited as your creativity.
Yeah.
Like sometimes even if you try stupid stuff out, it works, and you're like, wow, that's amazing.
And I think that's the versatility that I've always really come to appreciate about this hero, and why, even though I'm no longer really an offlane player, he still maintains a pretty high win rate for me because through coaching, specifically from you, I've been able to actually learn a lot of those to find those opportunities to use his abilities and his talent spikes that he does get to great advantage. So moving on to 16, what do we want to take here?
So again, this differentiates between the builds. If you're going the standard build, again, the E Ghost Wraith build, you want to go Royal Focus. Now this combines with Ominous Wraith really well. Now Ominous Wraith, again, gives you 100% increased duration on your E, so you're basically you're in E a long time, so you can basically E 2 screens away. So you can be mid lane, ghost yourself up, basically top lane on a lot of maps for free, or bot lane. This kind of enables that more because every Q you land with it now lowers the cooldown by 5 seconds. Or every hero you hit, lowers it by 7 seconds.
And it does more damage.
Yeah, and it does 50% more damage.
That's significant, guys. Like, Leo's Q is pretty, it hurts quite a bit, just baseline. But I found that once you get the 16 with Royal Focus, when you're using that Wraith Walk to kind of go onto backliners, you become a significant threat to them, actually, in a personal sense, because you pop out with the 50% damage increase plus the slow from Q, and that Vala sitting back there is about to lose half her health from you just popping out and whacking her with the Q and any follow-up auto attacks that you can sustain. It's a significant amount, and and not only does it help you in the wave clear, but it really puts the threat onto any backliners and they start to respect you after they get hit by that once or twice. As soon as they see the ghost walk at them, they're like, I'm out of here.
Yeah, that's honestly, like, you go from, with the two talents combined, you go from a 2.5 second to 5 second ghost form. So you feel like an unstoppable monster. You can literally you can just zip right through the front line, go straight to the back line, and then they're entrapped. If the enemy team doesn't have a fort near them, you can basically just entomb behind them. You can keep ghosting through them or damage reducing them. And also with the Q resets, you can Q a bunch. So in the Q, I know it's not a stun, it's a slow. But that slow allows your team to step up more. And if you have a tank with any sort of dive, they can follow that up really well and get guaranteed stuns. If you're playing with an Nubarak especially, if you slow a target, his E, like if he's within range, is almost a guaranteed hit unless they have some sort of movement, like a Vala E, Illidan W, a Liming teleport.
Well, if you're at 16, and Uberak has Epicenter, I mean, you hit 2 to 3 heroes with that. There's no way he can miss with his dive.
Yeah, or even a Diablo with wallbangs. Yeah. A Garrosh can just walk up and Q or throw, or even sometimes throw and then Q a hero. Johanna can Blessed Shield.
Uh,
There's so many combos. ETC Power Slide, Muradin can just leap in, just leap right past their backline. Just you're basically 2v2ing their backline until your backline gets there, which should be relatively soon.
So where
There's just
13 talent tier kind of sets up everything with Omnirath, Royal Focus is really the talent that brings the pain. It's the one that actually really makes the build start to take off, to become that late game threat that everyone hates dealing with.
yeah, it's like a roller coaster. It's like 13 is when you really start speed up, and then 16 is when it next gear. Because they combine it goes from your 13 having burst, where you basically have a burst of where they can't do damage, to 16 is just they constantly can't do extra damage. If they're getting queued by you, they're done. Like, as long as your team isn't getting bursted elsewhere, as long as you're hitting most of the DPS heroes, it should just be like they're kind of screwed. Unless they're bursting you super hard out of ghost form, which, if you're ghosting right, which normally if you're leaving your body in like a bush far away, or you're above, below them, behind, or whatever, where you're safe, you should be at pretty much full health going in. And again, this also goes back this is what I kind of love about Leo, is all his talents interact with each other in a way. If you're going, like, I like to go Austin Renewal. If I'm going Austin Renewal and say I ghost through them one time and they deal 30% of my health, basically, guess what? I just pop Austin Renewal. Bam, I'm at full health, and I'm draining at the same time. If they're just focusing me on damage, I'm gonna be at full health throughout the whole thing, as long as I'm ghosting through all of them. And then they're panicking, and then my team wins the fight. I drop the Entomb and my team usually wins the game off that.
Absolutely. So let's quickly talk about the other talent. Again, we don't advise that the Drain actually Hope build is better in most situations when we talk about Leoric, but it definitely still has its place, so we might as well explore it.
Oh yeah, definitely. This is kind of where it goes from Drain Hope being up all the time to dealing damage. Crushing Hope at 16 is the next talent for the Drain Hope build, and if your Drain Hope lasts the full duration, you deal an extra 15% to the enemy hero. It doesn't apply an extra heal, but if you're facing a tanky hero, like especially anyone with armor like Garrosh or Johanna, that just chunks. That is a big chunk. Like, again, you should be using this build to chunk a specific hero or two, or going for the March combo where you just march them and then drain them at the end of 20.
Makes that full stack Diablo feel like a shot, like he's only a level 1, right?
Oh yeah, I accidentally picked this build. I didn't go March. I went in Tomb, but I accidentally picked W at 13 and then at 16 in a scrim once, and I, like, the other team's Diablo, like, I typed in whoops, and the other team was like laughing a little bit, like, at my talent pick. But the other team's Diablo, they stopped laughing after a while because I just started draining the crap out of him, and he's like, where'd my souls go? Just die. Like, I would just drain him, W him, and my team would like follow up with a little bit of damage. It was like, bam, he's dead. Just I'd land a W, 15% of health. I'd land another W, 15. That's 15 plus the damage it's already doing. That's an immense amount of damage. That's like half his health bar. It's just so much damage. But again, you're limited. Your utility stays the same. It's kind of selfish in a way. Now again, if you're specifically targeting a tank or a frontliner, or you're waiting for level 20 with the March upgrade, it can be good. But otherwise, it's kind of selfish in a way. It's just going to help your damage statistics, but not necessarily your team win most of the time.
Exactly.
Can. I would say on one map I have found that it's more useful on is Infernal Shrines, but that's just because March can also clear those Shrine Monkeys, which is kind of funny usage of it, but it can make a difference.
Yeah. And that's a good point to make at. Sometimes it's map specific that it gives the power just because of the nature of the objective. And Infernal Shrines kind of forces a lot of teams to fight within very close quarters, which is where you get the value from March of the Black King anyways, and the Drain Life build, that you want those heroes in range, that's why he's saying melee is an important condition, because you need to be able to hit them. And then, of course, CC setup. But if they're all funneled into a corridor and get CC'd, well, then it's just going to get insane value. And like you said, on Infernal Shrines in particular, you can probably also clear an objective at the same time. So it's a lot. That's where that utility kind of maybe starts to come back into it when you're using this particular build for the most part. So let's move on to level 20. This is the final talent tier, but and one talent in particular, but now we kind of have two, really make this talent tier the scariest tier. And I mean, we literally lost a match at the end of the night. We were playing together last night, almost purely off of a freaking Silence and Tomb. So we're going to talk about that in particular, because it just makes this already very utilized and fantastic ability that gets a lot of value throughout the game into this just almost just oppressive force that becomes almost impossible to deal with in the late game.
Okay, so Buried Alive at level 20. It lowers the cooldown of a tomb for 4 to 3 seconds, but it silences anyone in it and also silences on the edge of it. One of my favorite plays I ever did with this, I did an in-house game with Cavalier Discord, and I think I landed a 3 people in the entomb. But the Lily was using there was a Lily on the other team, and they were doing her heal ult, and their tank was like right on side, and I got them on the side of it to where it shut down both their ults. So her heal went away, her 3 backliners, or her 2 backliners and her offlaner were silenced, and both her and her tank were stuck, and their heals and her heal was gone, which was a huge deal. There's so many games that I've won off this talent in coordinated and solo queue, especially coordinated. So many scrims that you just win off this talent. If you are Eing properly from range, if you're constantly queuing, if you're looking for it, if you're setting your team up with it, ring comms, I always say ghosting, and I usually prelude with that with like looking for Silence and Tomb. And I get any form of CC. If I see heroes line up, bam, Silence and Tomb, they should die. Just straight up, they should die. My team should have some sort of stun, some sort of burst damage, some sort of displacement, something out of it that just destroys them. Unless I'm just Silence and Tombing them, someone way away from my team. In which case it won't get as much value. It can. For example, in a fight once, I think I played a game about a week or two ago where I silenced and tombed a Morales away behind her team. And I didn't kill her, but I made her to where she was so low health she couldn't go back into the fight because I was just right on her. And the team couldn't heal, and she was their only healer. So my team basically, I basically forced her to run away. I walked back in, and my team's in a 5v4, and we win. This turns the usage and the versatility and the creativity you can make with Entomb and just amplifies it by 10. There's so many unique plays you can make with it. And as long as you're constantly aware of those plays, like, oh, I can make an Entomb here, oh, I can make one here, oh, I can make one here, oh, I should look for one here. This choke point looks good. They're constantly moving like this, so I can catch them if they're clumping like this. You can catch so many players at literally every level. And there's nothing quite like landing a good Silence and Tomb. It's
a great feeling.
It's a thrill, man. It's one of those highs that you get from the game that's just like, especially in coordinating, you're like, this is why I play the game, man. This is what I play the game for. Landing one of those and just feeling dirty about it's just great. And all the combinations that you can do with Entomb before are just amplified. The Diablo, where he can wallbang off it gets crazier because they're silenced, so he can hold the wallbang until like the end and then flip them and then do his flippy crap. Or if he wants to super burst someone, he can do his level 20 Hellgate, just instant, just drop that raw out of it and then wallbang them off another thing and then Q flip them and then APOC. That's a combo I've seen done, which is disgusting.
Yeah, sounds like it. That's like that takes quite a bit of good micro though to pull that one off. That's for certain.
I had a Diablo player once on my team literally just walk up and Hellgate, like Hellgate basically in place and did it. It was pretty funny.
Nice.
Um, Another one that I've seen is that's actually amazing is So a classic combo with Entomb is you Stuke off Silence under the regular Entomb. Well, if you do that out of a Silence Entomb, you're guaranteed to hit it, and you can drop the root too, to where you can extend the silence from like 3 seconds to basically just, oh yeah, it's forever.
Yeah, you're
There's
stuck here till you die. Woo! That's what I was looking for.
Any sort of root is also amazing.
Yeah.
Like with Mouth, another combo that comes to mind. Again, there's so many. Mouth can root out of it and then just walk up Twilight Dream. It's like, wow, they're silenced even longer.
I've seen really good setups from Stay a While and Listen. Get a big
Oh,
Stay a While, and then you get a Silence Entomb right after that. Plus, you could also do the Stay a While level 20 upgrade that silences people for 2 seconds afterwards. And then you're making it just insanely stupid.
Last season in NGS, I had a play where my healer, Drink and Run, he was played a lot of Deckard, and I played a lot of Leo. I entombed them. I think I silence entombed them, and he did the, what's it called, the whirlwinds?
Lornado. Yeah.
Lornado, and he Lornadoed them. I think it was on Sky Temple into the boss, and they all got bossed. I got like four heroes, and we killed all of them. But the 3 that were left got hit by the boss stun, and 2 of them died to the boss. It's pretty funny.
Anyways, let's quickly talk about the other one, the other our level 20 choice here, just so we can move this along a little bit further, because we can definitely talk about this all night. What is the March of the Black King upgrade? What's its name, and why is it so good?
So it's called Death March, and the reason it's good is if you're able to survive all that, which you should, because again, you should usually W when you're marching, and you should, now that you have the 13 and 16 upgrade to your W, Unyielding Despair and Crushing Hope, you should be able to get more health and do more damage. The final swing of it applies Drain Hope to all enemy heroes. Now, if you hit 3 or more heroes, that should be a lot of Drain Hopes. That should basically, if you keep 2 of them up the whole duration, you're basically healed to full health.
Are they talented or untalented Drain Hope?
I believe they're talented, but I'm actually not
that's
too sure.
disgusting. So assuming they are talented,
I think they are, because I've done some massive damage. And if you get the and it also does apply the like if you go hopelessness with the extra range, it's like whoof, you get that extra range. It's just nasty.
Yeah. So
and again, you can combine that with your Q out it. You should generally Q out of it too, if you can land it, because that slows enemy heroes, so they can't just walk away.
It's just another big giant swing too, as well, with a ton of damage follow up. So. And
then you can W again behind that on a hero and just kill them.
It makes his power, like his team fight effect, just that much more devastating. Again, probably only with low mobility or melee type heroes that he can hit within range. But if you have those conditions, it can be just a scary thing to see that March of the Black King, the Death March coming out, and all you want to do is run away, and you just can't.
Yeah, any team that sort of clumps, like a Lucio, a Brightwing, a team with a bunker, a Blaze Bunker, a team with a Sanctification Ontario, if you can just pop that out of it, you can just wreck them. You can turn their form of clumping into their worst nightmare. Again, it's kind of selfish in a way, because that's just going to make your damage really high. But it is if your team specifically wants you to burst the tank or frontline, that can be insanely effective. Whereas Silence Entomb would be more of a backliner burst, but it can be applied to other heroes.
Yeah, it's a setup. And you often want that setup in your team. Like it has. We can't understate enough how a good play around Entomb, plus all the other very strong abilities that we've discussed already about Leoric having, really makes he becomes a super good playmaker on your team. And the more you can leverage that, generally the better off you are, especially in coordinated play. But as it can say, there are instances that you can get some probably unexpected value out of that talent, if people aren't expecting it coming either, and they make the mistake of taking too much melee into you or too low mobility, and you guys have enough CC setup, it could be very well the one thing that just crushes the enemy team's ability to get back into a game and allows you to win. So, it definitely has its effect.
Yeah, I will say one thing that I would suggest with it, if you're going to run it, you should run three frontliners usually, because usually you're going to run it on a team with low damage, right? So if you have low damage and you have that March upgrade, well, your team should be able to sustain on their own, and you should basically, like if you combine Leo with Arthas and say another frontliner like a Rexar, you can basically just stay on top of them forever
Yeah,
with
can
that.
never get away from that. That sounds
That
terrible.
sounds like a silly combination, but if you see it in motion, it's like,
Yeah,
whew,
you might be at low upfront damage, but if there's, if you catch them, they're never gonna get
if they
out of
can't
there.
kill you, if
Yeah,
they can't kill you, then you can kill them, and
yeah,
you can kill them, then you win. It's
pretty
basic
simple.
math.
Okay, so moving on, we've kind of gone through very detailed version of kind of what we're looking for, and and throughout discussing the talents, we've actually gotten through a lot of what makes Leoric effective and good, and how you should more or less be playing the hero in a competitive setting or otherwise. The biggest weaknesses, let's talk about quickly about that you should watch out for when playing a Leoric.
So the biggest weakness is that he kind of dies in team fights a lot. That can also be a strength because if you die in a team fight, let's say you get a 1v1 trade, you'll be up quicker. Um, the next biggest weakness is he doesn't have he, like you can't solo carry basically with him. You can with drain build and solo queue, but not coordinated most of the time. You have to rely a lot on your team, and if your team's losing, then you're not gonna curb the losing. Although again, on the flip side, if your team's winning, you can accelerate the winning a ton. You can basically be the snowball for your team. Um, he also again doesn't have amazing CC. His only CC is the silence and tomb and the slow from his Q, and neither of those are like the Q is somewhat reliable, but it's not huge. Even if you went the 4 upgrade for the slow, it's not gonna change a game. It's not gonna impact the game in any significant or even remotely significant way. Um, and he also does have some weird in matchups, and he does struggle into ganks. He can't really turn on ganks as much as say a Malthael. If a Malthael gets ganked by say like basically a Zeratul, Malthael can kind of turn that a little bit. He can Q him and chunk a Zeratul for a lot of health and heal up on a wave, whereas Leo kind of just has to eat it. Um, and I would also say that another weakness of his that's kind of understated is that into anyone that does percent damage, they can kind of chunk him. Like Tychus, especially, can be just a pain for Leo players. If you're facing a Tychus and you're not constantly aware of where he's at, he can just if he walks up to you, half your health bar is down. Whereas like if you're playing another offlaner, you can avoid a lot of his stuff. You can, assuming you don't have your E up, you can, like as a Sony, you can just run him down and just heal off a wave. As a Malthael, uh, same thing with Imperius a little bit. It's just kind of hard. It's really hard for him to deal with ganks if he's too far out, and he just dies to them a lot of the time. Whereas other offlaners can fight back a little bit
Okay. Now we've kind of
and peel for
discussed.
themselves.
Oh, sorry.
And peel for themselves. Sorry.
Yeah. Anyways, and Tychus in particular has that effect on a lot of frontline or melee style heroes who don't have kind of the mobility to do with it. So, I mean, if you play with your vision pretty well and make sure you don't give him an obvious target, you can definitely play around that. But you are right. Anything that has that ability to kind of do more damage than he can sustain through in a short period of time tends to be a bit of a problem for Leoric overall. As you said, if he gets focused by target or by anyone, so if he's out kind of in the middle anywhere, leaving his body when he's ghosting in any situation where they can do easy damage to him, his effectiveness drops significantly because that health pool of his is very much a resource, and something has to be able to reliably replenish and or get value out of prior to dying if he's going to be effective in any particular team fight.
Yeah, pretty much. You really got to rely on your team as the hero is the real big thing that I go back to, which can again makes them seem kind of boring to a degree. Whereas like an Illidan, a Samuro, you can kind of solo carry a game. But again, this is a team game. You should win off your team. You should lose with your team. Uh, I I will say that another weakness he does have is on some maps he's not as effective. Like BOE comes to mind,
Yeah.
Battlefield of Eternity. He doesn't contribute to race really. His CC isn't super helpful on that map, and Entomb at 10 is just not gonna have that big of effect on the map because it's really hard to catch someone off in a quarter. The only time it's really helpful is if they're fighting on your immortal and you catch them and they get stunned off the immortal, which can happen more than you think, but that's the one map I constantly think of that he's weak on.
Yeah, it's just not enough reasons to not take somebody else that amplifies your objective control or your camp clear, because the wave clear isn't that big a deal. It's not like he can double soak. It's not like he can really like win a long 1v1 matchup. It's not necessary. It just seems like it doesn't play to his strengths as a hero.
Yeah, he's the only time you'd want to take him there is the counter specific heroes are to get E value.
The segues, yeah. Go ahead.
Which again can counteract heroes, but that's sort of a specific thing that you got to wait for. Which in that map you might not have time to wait.
So the segues kind of into drafting, compositionally and kind of maps. So we've kind of already amplified, maps like Tomb of the Spider Queen with lots of walls that you can kind of get combo value out of your Entomb with close waves where you can get pretty good value out of double soaking. Definitely plays to his strengths, whereas maps like Battlefield of Eternity don't. Is there anything else worth noting? And how would you think about Leoric when you're drafting him? What are the conditions that you like to have when you choose to take him, as opposed to when you don't? And what type of heroes do you like to pair him with, and which ones don't seem to synergize very well?
So the first thing I always think of is the map. Pretty much, Sky Temple is a map where he's very hit or miss. So I kind of tend to stay away from drafting him too much on that map, but he can get immense value there. Late game on that map, he can, when games often come down to temple fights or boss fights, Silence and Tomb and his Ghost Wraith can just win games. But other than that, he has limited push value. He can control the point, but you got to have specific matchups for that map. Any real point control map. So I know it's on the NGS map pool right now, but Brax's Holdout, he's pretty good at. Dragonshire, he's a mainstay on that map. Tomb is kind of a point control map. One thing really good on that map is you can clear the wave quicker than just about any offlaner of 4, and then just control the point and just sit there and deny the bot turn in. So you can literally basically control the entire bottom half of the map for your team, as well as just poke up and double soak real quick if your team's pushing top or having an engagement top, which can accelerate your lead. Towers is another amazing map for him where you can double soak.
Double soaking is kind of like Towers of Doom is the map I think of most times when I think double soaking, because it's the one map where so much tends to be focused on the bottom half of the map that double soaking is just easy. I would say Infernal Shrines is probably my second one that I tend to think of when I think double soaking. But yeah, Towers of Doom in particular is a strong map for Leoric.
The first thing I think of with Towers, along with double soaking, is ganks. And his E ghost form speed with the ganks bot lane. I always say bot lane is win lane on that map. You should be controlling bot. If you're controlling bot lane, you're controlling the game. And nobody in the off lane gets there quicker except maybe on a Pill Horse Mouth Heal or Global than Leo does. Like, he's just quick. You clear mid, you can ghost there, you can mount and then ghost in, and then bam, the other team, you can catch the other team off guard, bam, they're gone, they're dead. Game's basically over. Cursed Hall is another one where he's weird at. I would say avoid drafting him, but it's very matchup specific or what you're looking for in team fights. Generally, Infernal, as you said, was really a couple maps that aren't in like the NGS map pool right now. Hanamura, he's not very good at. Kind of the same as BOE, except a little bit more. I would say it's actually much worse for him.
Yeah, no close lanes, and camping is something that he is weak at. I don't feel he's a very strong camper. He's not like the worst. He does have some things that help kind of, but not by himself.
Warhead's kind of the same thing, although that map no one really plays. Well, Sky he's actually amazing at because that map always goes late and he is a late game god.
Yeah.
And also just like early fights he can just weave in and out. You can weave in, fight on the point, then go back bottom, clear wave, come back in.
And conveyors actually might help you a bit, where you're leaving your ghost on, or your body on the conveyor when you're ghosting around. It gives you mobility while you're ghosting around everywhere.
It actually speeds you up, which is the weird effect. That's kind of it's something I thought was stupid initially, but then the more I play with it, I'm like, wow, this is genius, beautiful game design, Blizzard. I love it. Guard of Terror is another map where it's kind of weird. I think he can double soak, but it's kind of hard. I haven't actually tested that out too much.
Yeah.
But he does impact team fights there, and teams do tend to clump there. But that's also it's kind of like Cursed Hollow in that you got to draft specifically. Heroes I like to draft him with. Really, he works. It's really hard to think of heroes he doesn't work with. To be honest, like he works with burst. He works with sustain. It really depends. Like he's kind of like a Swiss Army knife. He's kind of just whatever your team needs. But again, he can't like carry a game like another offlaner can, like an Illidan, like a Malthael, like a Dahaka can oftentimes, like a Blaze even can with CC in a way until level 20. He kind of just enables your team to carry off him.
Probably where that idea of vanilla offlaner kind of comes in, because you can kind of draft him into almost anybody.
One combo I do like is Hanzo though. You Dragon Arrow off that.
Oh yeah.
Off an Entomb. That's nasty. That's just if you're both level 20 and he's got like the global arrow. Oh man, you can like global anyone from a mile away. Planet Cracker I know is kind of a meme, but that's really effective too. Salvo is also really good with Phoenix. So like just Phoenix in general, because his Q can poke through. It's insane.
Yeah, he's a master of AoE damage, and you're generally going to be grouping 2 to 3 heroes into an Zoom. You don't have to, but generally that's what's going to be happening in a lot of situations. So, anything that locks a couple heroes into that spot is going to get massive amount of AoE damage, and Phoenix is definitely one of those heroes that does a pretty good job off of it. You also do like Malfurion because easy roots, Stukov because the silence combinations with it. So, like you said, there's just so many heroes that he combos well with that it's kind of hard to pick anything not. And and that's the thing. Like if you're pairing, most builds are going to pair well with Entomb, and then very specific builds are going to pair very well with the March of the Black King build, the Drain Hope build.
Another one I actually like that I've been doing recently is Blaze with Leo. If you do main tank Blaze and if you finish his new habits, for example, he just pops his D is Pyromania. He's unstoppable. He just oil spills on him. You entomb and then he stuns him. And it's nasty.
Yeah.
It's so nasty. You can set each other up, and it's like, it's kind of like you play off each other so much, and it's beautiful to mess with people with that. Imperius is another one that he sets up. There's some heroes where he kind of gives, some heroes where he takes. He follows up this hero, he leads this hero. Imperius is one where he leads with an entomb. If you entomb someone and he Qs, bam, he can land like an easy. If you entomb 3 heroes, bam, he gets a Q. 3 heroes queued on. They're speared. And then he pops his E, and you just your team melts them. And they're stuck.
Yeah.
Jaina with either of her ults just burst them. One I've actually liked to run is Illidan sometimes with him, where Illidan just hunts in on an entomb target and just burns them, and then W's the enemy team.
Yeah.
Just out-sustains them. Karazim or Malthael for 7-sided Last Rites. Kel'Thuzad combo, that's a classic.
Yeah, I mean, grouping anyone together, for Kel'Thuzad and or Riptire are very effective. So.
Or Kel'Thas's Pyroblast. Johanna is actually one that I think is secretly insane, because out of the Entomb she can condemn them, and then out of the condemn she can Blessed Shield them. Or she could Falling Sword the lead in.
Or you can follow up Blessed Shield with a Entomb as well. So she's one of those heroes that can kind of do both of what you're saying, either be an initiator with you following up and or vice versa.
Yeah, Kerrigan's another one too. It sets up her combo well. Li Ming, if she gets resets in that Entomb, she just hits everybody with every spell.
Yeah, they can't get anywhere. Makes sense.
Hammer with her BFG is insane. That's another great one.
So what heroes does he struggle into? And I think probably the ones that I can think of is anyone that can get out of an Entomb becomes a bit of a problem until at least you get the silence, right?
Yeah, Illidan can be a bit of a struggle because he can get out of the Entomb with his Q, and also In lane, he can beat him up a little bit. Thrall, kind of the same concept, not as much beating him up, but he can use his mobility in a lot of ways. Rexstar in lane is kind of a hassle to deal with. You're not gonna like win a lane into him. You just gotta kind of tie it. Although you can out double soak him.
Genji's just gonna hop out of it.
Genji's gonna hop out. Genji's also hard to deal with because he's a gank monster.
Yeah.
Same thing with Zeratul. Zeratul, especially if you E out on a Zeratul and he auto attacks you, he can just, Vorpal on you, and you're kind of just eating damage. Zigara in lane can kind of mess him up, but Zigara is gankable and has no self-sustain, so that's kind of a given trade.
Yeah, and her movement speed on creep doesn't really do her much good on a gank. If your team's rotating and you pop your E, you can actually get behind her because she can't outrun you, body block and or entomb, and if your team's there for follow-up, she's going to die.
Another one that's also, I mentioned it, Zertul, as an offlaner, he can just avoid everything that you do, so you don't have self-sustain and just gradually poke you out in a lane.
And his wave clear keeps up. Once you get his rending cleave and greater cleave kind of abilities, his Zeratul, I think out of almost all assassins is probably the fastest, if not one of the fastest in wave clear.
Oh yeah, he can also offlane. Like he can reasonably keep up with the double soak because like Blink also gives him mobility similar to Ghost, Wraithon, Leo.
And Void Prison can kind of mess with your entombs too as well.
Yeah. Dahaka can be hard into lane too because once Dahaka, if he's going the standard build right now, which is essence gives, the more essence stacks you get, the more health you get. He just like outlives you, and his silence is kind of nasty. And he can also E under your entombs, so like dodge CC that follows up if he gets entombed, or if he goes the 16 upgrade for Izzy, he can E out of your entomb, even your silence entomb.
Alrighty,
which could be nasty.
Getting into the end kind of this, because this is much, much longer than any of the other ones that we've done so far. And guys, the show is going to evolve a bit, and I'm going to try to be a little bit more thorough. And so we'll definitely see guys back like Ryokai and CT when we met to give us some more information that I might have missed in my own interviews with them. It's just we have a lot to talk about on this particular hero, and I feel like an in-depth dive is definitely warranted and necessary. But getting a little bit more general, more specific to you, Johnknight1, what is it you do to practice, to learn heroes, to get better at them? You can use Leoric as a base example, or just in general. What is your advice to people on if they want to pick up Leoric after this today, or any hero that matter, and really become good at them and be able to pull off the plays that we've even talked about today?
So actually, before I played in Heroes, I did a lot of speedrunning and a lot of fighting competitively at kind of lower level. And what I would do to practice, same as anybody, I would just go to training mode. I would just do the same thing over and over again. So what I like to do in Heroes is I use the sandbox, which is you do a custom game. Like you go to custom games, you do Volskaya or Cursed Hollow. There's a sandbox version, and I just practice on dummies a lot of the time. I will sometimes, for Leo specifically, I'll get a bunch of dummies, and I'll put them in a specific, like I'll spread them out a little bit, and I'll try to entomb them. Or if I'm practicing my E build where I'm trying to get Q resets, or practice, Eing efficiently to where my pathing's on point, I'll practice Eing through all of them, or getting my Q resets on all of them. And then draining at the same time. I'll practice cleaving my auto attacks, and timing my cleave, and then again, because he has 3 auto attacks, he does a cleave, and then a double damage single target burst. I'll practice that. And I just do those. When I was first learning him, I literally, I did that a little bit. Then I actually had a video where Kala kind of went over with my team at the time, FML Esports, and he basically just grinded me for like 15 minutes on Leon. That's how I got really good. He just told me what to improve on, and I went and I literally spent like 4 hours just like dropping, like literally just dropping entombs like a maniac, just dropping entombs, thinking of how I can use entomb. I could use it here. I could use it here. Like I literally even looked at maps, like the overview maps of every map, and like, okay, I can use it at that corner, I can use it that corner, I can use it here, there, to where now I don't even think about it. I just kind of know where I can use it. And I kind of do that with all my heroes. Before I was good at like I kind of have a mentality where before I was like a Sonya one trick and a Greymane one trick before that, to where I kind of mentally one trick a hero and I get really good at them, and then I just kind of always know that hero now. And that's what I did with Leo is one of the first heroes I did that, and it just helps me personally grind out a hero. Like, and then I'll also spam games. Obviously, you gotta play now Storm League. Just spam a hero in Storm League. Just like if you want to practice, just spam it. If you lose, you lose. You learn. Spam it in scrims, especially. Like if you're on an NGS team or any other league, you should be scrimming first and foremost, and you should be spamming any hero that you want to learn. And if you lose and you fail, that's not a big deal. Failure's actually better because you learn from failure, and failure, like every failure you make, makes you closer to that big success. And once you hit that big success, you've earned it. And that's one of the most rewarding things about competing is, failing and then like doing, like not just succeeding, but exceeding your success, your goal in success. And that's one thing I was really, actually one of the reasons I wanted to do Leo is initially my first season on Leo, I think I was 1-7 on him, 1-6 on FML Esports. Then on my next team, I was like, I think I went 8-1 on him. And then on the next season, I had a similar record. Like he went from like a hero where I was just mad I had to play to like a hero I was like, oof, we're gonna win this game, easy win, baby. Just that different, that when you practice that hard, that it's not just the mechanics you get good at or the mindset or just preparing yourself. It's also the confidence. And when you got that confidence, it's really, really, really hard to like get beat real hard by anybody at your level, and that gives you such an edge, and it levels you up so much quicker. I know that was a bit ranty, but I'm really passionate about that because just getting good at this game feels amazing. I'm learning something new in this game.
This whole thing, again, it is an in-depth, and I appreciate all that because it does get the point across. I was going to follow that up with why. I've heard this now from all three of our experts, Storm League and Scrims. Those are the major two forms of practice that has been recommended by every single one of our experts. Why Storm League, or Scrims? Why not? Why can't you learn all the skills you need to learn in AI? Why can't you learn it all in Quick Match?
So you can start in AI in Quick Match. There's nothing wrong with that. But Storm League is really like the game is meant to be played with a draft. So like Unranked doesn't play maps that are in the map pool right now. I think Alterac's the only. Yeah, we swapped out Alterac for Braxis and NGS specifically. Since they're both in Storm League, so it's not an issue. It just allows you to practice the proper map pool. Now that it's kind of Hero League and Team League combined, there's a little bit of silly matchmaking. I was Grandmaster last season. I'm getting some bronzes in my game now, which is a little weird, kind of. But generally, you should play against people. It's a little wonky now, but you should play against people mostly at your level. And when you're playing with people at your level, that's when you should really be able to analyze the best, because you're like, okay, if I'm gold, I should be, doing equally as good as gold. And if you start, and if you're grinding your mechanics, you're thinking creatively, like, okay, I can use this and this, and then you stop thinking about it and it just becomes instinct. You go from a gold to a plat. You go from a plat to a diamond. You go from a diamond to a master. You go from master to GM. Like, I literally did that.
That's what you did, right? You started from the bottom and went all the way to the top.
Literally what I did in my last 3 seasons in GS. I basically went to Grandmaster level after like a season and a half, because just I was constantly screaming. I was getting my butt kicked in scrims. I fed a lot. I got destroyed, and then I'd just learn. I'd get mad, and then I'd just go in the lab. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go practice on dummies. As Sonya, I'm gonna go kill 100 dummies. I'd basically hurt my hands just pressing all the buttons. Then guess what? Game time next scrim, I was ready, and I improved vastly. And scrims is where you really, really step it up, because that's when you get to experiment with your team on comps. You get to practice your heroes that you've been working on, and that's where you also get the confidence, because you're facing a real other team. You're not just facing 5 randomly put together people, where one person's not just going to randomly throw. You're facing a team. You're facing a group of players that chose to play with each other. And if they chose to play with each other, then they should play with each other reasonably well. and there's so much you learn from scrims. It's really hard to put into words because you'll face people with different backgrounds, different priorities and how they view things. Just and then you add that not just that, but teams have collective mentalities too, and it's when you face everything, you know how to deal with everything, and that's what you really learn from scrims. And then when you bring that to the game time and you get that game confidence from NGS matches, I learned a lot playing in Hero in Open Division and other leagues as well. It just steps that up another level. Like, and also scrims also set so each level kind of sets each other up. So you practice AI quick match and especially mechanical practice, I would say, or just even prepping yourself for mechanics. Kind of sets you up for Storm League. Storm League sets you for Scrim set you up for actual matches, and all of those are going to get you better. And really, I was never really a Hero League grinder per se, but with Storm League, I'm actually trying to really grind. I think I've already played like 70-ish games. I think, and it's been what, a week, something like that. It hasn't even been a week, but I've been like grinding. I don't know, how long has it been, Ziltoid? It's been like
I have no idea. It's been a month or so or something like that. Not even. No. I think it was the middle or beginning of March that
But
everything
yeah,
rolled over.
I've been grinding it. My team, I told them to grind it partially because I wanted to tell myself to grind it because it's just important to get practice in and just spam new heroes, spam your constant heroes so you stay fresh. And if you're constantly doing, but if you're just constantly playing it whenever you can, it it's you get so much better. Just like if you're doing all those things, you just get so much better. Like I went from having a offlane hero pool of, oh, I play Greymane to, oh, I play Greymane and Sonya to, oh, I have this hero that nobody else plays like Leo, which is it's an ace in Leo. That's kind of why I went with Leo, is because he's just my big ace in the hole no one else really has. And once you have those kind of heroes and you have that kind of hero pool, you just, as an offlaner especially, you just feel oppressive, and that feels great. It feels great kind of being oppressive.
And
As mean as that
confidence
sounds.
is one of those very important things that I know you coach a lot and talk about a lot. Is one of those essential things about becoming a better player. Is you have to be able to have confidence in the hero you play and your ability to do what you need to do. And again, all of those things that he's just talked about are the keys to get to that. And you have to put the time in and the work in if you want to improve, if you want to get better. So to kind of close this all out, I've been playing with Johnknight1 for, I don't know, 3 seasons of NGS plus, off and on, and he's coached 2 of my teams in the last year. I don't know anybody that's been more helpful to me as a player to get better. And I know that you are willing to pass your knowledge along to anyone, and really kind of help anyone improve. So if you have questions or issues or things like that, if you want to learn, especially the off lane specifically, much better, you should take advantage of John Knight's knowledge. And I'm sure if you reach out to him and ask him some questions or want to go over some things, he'd be more than willing to oblige. So to kind of top that all off, where can we find you? And anything that you want to kind of say before we end this.
So going off that, you're right, I do like helping people. It's insane how much like coaching you learn. I actually have an app. I have a thing in the coaching request up. I don't care any rank, bronze GM, and everything in between, bottom division, top division, I've helped all of them. Just DM me, like, hey, I need help with this matchup. Hey, how do I learn this hero? Hey, what build should I be going? Hey, what should I be looking to do? Hey, I'm struggling on this map. Like, even if you're not an offlaner with like offlane related things, I generally know all of it. Some of it and a lot of it I consider myself somewhat of an expert on, just because I've had to learn it all. It's in the NGS Discord in the coaching request form. You can find my Twitter at JK@JKHots, or is it? I'm sorry, at JK1Hots. And I guess you can find me technically in next season of Heroes Lounge, getting ready to crack into the S division with my Team Sanctified Livestock, with my boy Ryokai, who I gotta flame because I'm better at Leo than he is at Sylvanas. Let's be real.
Well, I appreciate you coming on and doing this for me, and we ran a lot longer than I was originally anticipating based off of my previous videos. But like I said,
just like our VOD review.
Yeah, pretty much as usual. There's so much information to go of and so much to learn. I really don't regret it, and I'm can't wait to get this out to everybody. Obviously you can catch me on the Nexus Edge, and I also like to cast, so you can catch me on at twitch.tv/psziltoid, and at Darth Zendi. I know that's a little weird. I haven't switched everything over yet. It is going to be switched to at psziltoid on Twitter as well. And then, and that's about it for today. Thank you so much for coming, John Knight. I definitely appreciate it. And you have a great day.
All right, you too. Let's go logical decision, baby.
Absolutely.